It's been a while since I set up my logging setup, and I did make a previous attempt at some sort of a report on this for YouTube, but the video quality wasn't fantastic and I kind of left it. So let's have a look at what we've got. This is the web page for the module that is doing all the logging. If you remember my previous video, which was a while ago, but you can go back and look at it. This is just logging the roof. No, it's not logging the roof. It's logging two temperatures, top and bottom of the solar hot water system that I'm logging. And it also logs whether the pump is switched on or off. So all of that's working. And we can see here that this is just the instantaneous page. The pump's off, unsurprisingly, because there's no solar heat. The tank temperature is at 50.83 degrees, and the inlet temperature is down at 22. It's about 10 degrees outside Celsius at the moment, and that just gives us the voltage that the module is being provided. So I've just got a little power pack supplying the power for it. So if we look in here, this is just the setup page for the module. And if we go into the I/O setup and we have a look at the wrong one, analog inputs. And so if we look at the tank temperature, we can see that we've got plus or minus 10.24 volt as the range selection. I don't know why it does the 10.24 volts, but that's what it defaults to. You've got a list of options and some quirk of the module. I've asked for 2 decimal points on my temperature and in centigrade. This was surprising because I actually thought that these numbers would be different. I thought that would be 12 and I thought that would be 15. I won't go into specifically why in this video, but if anyone's interested in finding out, I can go in a little bit further. But I had to just empirically set this. I had to look at the temperature as it was being reported and note that, and look at the voltage that was being put out relative to it, and look what was being recorded here, and then I just had to sort of work it out. So the maths didn't actually get the answer that I expected, but this is reporting quite good numbers. So I've just got these 2 analog inputs, and I've got a digital input for the pump. This tracker state is just a lag over from a previous use of this module, but that's a digital input, and we can see that the pump, it says on or off on the depending on the input status, and it's in the mode of on off. You know, we can just go in there. Just basically, if it gets the 5 volts onto the input, it says that it's on, and if it's got 0, it says that it's off. And that's all working. And we have logging here, and I've got that set up to log in minutes, and I'm logging the inlet temperature, tank temperature, and I'm logging the pump on 1 minute intervals. And if I go into here, I can go graph file, and by default it'll graph just the temperature. So it's doing a little bit of it's loading up. And you can see this is not lightning on the module, which is important to note shortly. It seems that the module keeps 1 month. Oh, that's interesting. All right, let's graph the last 24 hours. It seems that it's quite slow to generate the log file. And so this is a bit of a feature, if we want to call it a feature, of the module. Oh, okay, so, okay, well, that is supposed to, okay, let's start time. We'll put it at midnight, and let's see if we try to graph this, see if it works. I've not tried this recently, so this is interesting. It's failing, but normally it would produce a plot, and it has in the past. I wonder whether now that I've got a full month's data, it's failing because of that for some reason. I don't know. I haven't used this type of module. No, it's not going to talk to me. I haven't used this particular module and logged anything long term. That's one of the reasons actually I'm using Works equipment, and it's spare and it's not waiting for any use. But that's all right, because I'm also learning how to use this module, and I will be using them at work. So that's a good thing to note. But if we go over here, I've downloaded and plotted the last month's data, which is all it's saving. So it's got a buffer of a month. And to create this plot, which if I close that down, you'll see that when I go to generate that plot, it takes a little while to do. But this is the program that I wrote. I'm using Visual Studio Code. I did use Python Jupyter. Well, I used the Jupyter Labs program, which is quite a handy thing for just when you're developing a program, and you want to look at the data real time and check line by line what you're doing. So I used Jupyter with a Y, Jupyter. The I in Jupyter is a Y in it, but I might look at that if people are interested. But I did use that when I was working out the program. But this is Python code. I'm using Visual Studio Code to do the programming. I really like it as an interface. But I'm importing these two here. Are imported to allow me to retrieve the data from the module. I'm using these two lines here, importing two libraries, Pandas. I'm importing two things from Pandas, and I don't know. I've seen this done like this. I'm not sure. I'm still learning Python. Probably I don't have to have those two lines. I could incorporate it in one. I could do it slightly different, but I haven't. Anyway, and I'm importing matplotlib.pyplot to generate the actual graphs. So I do use, when I'm writing code, I do actually use extensive comments. If you look at my earlier ones, videos with Dale Kingsmill from Monarch's Factory, my niece, when we were going through how to program, I have I think it was the last or second last video that I've got posted, and we will get back to, we're in lockdown here in Australia at the moment, and there's been a bunch of things going on, so we've been kind of stopped from getting together again. We might have to do it online, but we will get back to it. We've not given up on that program. But I was talking about how you build your program with comments, the algorithm, and then just fill in underneath it. Well, with a program as simple as this, there's no need for that. If I were to, actually, if I open up another window, right. This is a program that I'm writing for work, and if we just look at one file, that's just the basic one that, and this is the file that actually, the previous one just sort of is the startup file and generates and sort of starts up the program. And then this file here is the sort of main logic of the program. But then if we go over here, we've got pile of code. Oh, okay. A pile of code for a lot of, I'm importing a bunch of other stuff. So I've got a lot of other libraries in here. So this is quite a complicated program. And I just don't think I could write this sort of code unless I was using, I like to have, just these overarching comments on each thing. Otherwise, I just struggle to keep track of it all. So anyway, that was just to say that I definitely, when I'm writing larger programs, there's a bunch of drivers that I've got in here to talk to various bits of equipment, weather station and a web relay, and for the graphical user interface, and and I'm importing other libraries. You need to have that sort of commenting in your code. So that's definitely a thing I think to do. So I even do it in a little program like this. But I don't necessarily, when I'm doing this, I don't necessarily start with the algorithm. That other program, I spent a lot of time before I wrote the first bit of code, really. With these little ones, it's not that much of a problem. So here, I'm retrieving the log file. And so if I go to a web browser, and if I just copy this, and I go to a web browser, and I paste that address in, it will actually generate a log file for me in CSV format. And see, it's the last month, I think. If we go down the bottom, still rendering. Yes, you see it's still loading as we go. So it's quite slow to generate this, and you see, well, it's still loading. What we're up to the 7th now, and today is the 23rd. So I don't know, date format's what I thought of. Okay, so it's just downloaded the whole log file into this page. So all I do is I set that address, and then I'm using this request module, and it depends on the IO module, which is why it's in there, it requests this URL, and it gets the contents. So now I load that into the pandas library as a data frame. So that's just a way of storing the data, and that allows me to do, I can just work on it straight from that data frame. So now I'm going to format the data in the data frame so it can be easily plotted. So first thing I do is remove white space from the column headers. So if we go back to this web page, there's a white space inside of here between date and time, and that will trip me up in the program, and tank temperature. So those two would trip me up if I used them in the data frame, because the data frame doesn't handle them well in pandas. So I'm just, this line here is going to remove that white space, remove all white space from the entire file in. So it's going through all the different columns in that data frame. Yes, the data frame. So this is something you've got to rename as a function of this data frame. So there's all these functions that are built into the data frame, which is why I use them. And then I trim off the milliseconds and STD from the dates. So if we look at the again, if we go back here, the date has milliseconds here and STD at the end of the format. And given that there are always zeros through this file, that seems totally unnecessary detail. And also the plotting software wouldn't handle this STD, which I think is standard time, in that format. So I'm just using slicing in again a one-liner. I do is I find the dot. There's only one dot or decimal point in the first index, which is date time. I look at the 0th line in that column, which is the header, and I find, oh no, is that right? It can't be, because I want this line. Oh, yes, because it's a data frame. It's not like the normal file. That is not the 0th line. This is the 0th line. So I look for this decimal point here, and then I trim that off. So I find that decimal point. It's the only one in the date time field, which is this field. So I don't have to worry about ambiguity there. I just find that. And I use slicing to, with this line, I now know the position of that. I just trim off that last bit of the of that data, and that does it for all of the data all the data in that data frame, the whole file. Then I convert the date time column into a pandas timestamp. So I want to have it as the x-axis on the plot. So x-axis is the date, but it needs to be a date time object rather than just a string to for non-programmers. I suppose this is getting a bit tricky, but anyway, if you're interested, there's different data is stored differently. If you look at my previous video, I talk about data types, and there's strings, and there's, in this case, you need a date time. So this line here converts the whole of that column, a date time, which is called date time. I've got an ambiguity. Well, I haven't got an ambiguity. I've got two different ways of accessing it in that one line, which maybe is untidy. I think I had a reason why it was crashing for some reason, but anyway, it doesn't matter. You can do it two ways. And so this is telling it the format that it's written into the log file, and it converts it to, you can see when I mouse over, the function information, which is another handy thing about this interface. And then I just use matplotlib to create a plot. So this, by the time I get to this point here, when I get to this point here, it's read in the whole file. By the time I get to here, it's all in a format that I can use. And now I just create the plot and give it some title and a subtitle and a little bit of information about the spacing of the text on it. And I create an axis, and I'm adding a subplot. I'm going to have two plots, and I'm using, this is, Matplotlib. This is telling it to use, I want two plots and I want it one column wide on the plot. So I only have one. I could have two plots next to each other. I could have a plot here and a plot there on the page, but I only want one plot across the page all the way. So this just tells it there's going to be two plots, and this is the first of them, and it's only one plot per row. And then I create a plot with the date time as the x-axis, and the data frame tank temperature C, that just gives it the column name. To plot, that's the y-axis, and then I label it tank and I'll color it blue, and then same again, another plot on the same subplot in the same plot, and I plot the inlet and I make it red. That's C is color, C equals B for blue, C equals R for red, and then I label it, set the Y label until it's in degrees C, just put a grid on it, and this is just a little formatting command. And then I plot the pump state on a second plot. And so I add a second one, and I share the x-axis. So it means when I zoom in on one of the plots, it'll zoom both so they match. And then I plot the pump, and I set the label, and again, a grid and a bit of formatting. I tell it that the x-axis is a date, and then I tell it to show the plot. So to run that, all I need to do is I've written a little batch file, which is simply a one-liner. To run the Python, it's easy to double click, but it'll take a second to render. So double click on that, and it is now downloading the data from the module, and it is formatting it. It's very quick to run the program once it's got the data. If I had that CSV file already loaded, it'd be a lot faster. But I mean, I just check this every bit, every little while. So I'll usually click that, and I don't know, maybe it's 30 seconds to run. As I said, you could see when I was looking at it in the web browser, it took a long time to actually show all the data. So here's our two plots. So we've got, I should have a legend on here. I modified this. I had tank temperature on one plot. I had three plots, and then I decided I wanted to combine these two. And until I went and put this in the video, I didn't realize that I should have just had temperatures, and then I can put in labels up here to say what they are. But the blue is the tank temperature, and the red is the inlet temperature. And then here we can see we have our tank, whether it's the pump, whether it's turning on or off. And the nice thing about these is if I want to just look at the last couple of days, I can zoom in on these. And as I said, because I use that share X command, and now I can just drag these around and zoom in and out. I'm doing with this, I'm using the left mouse button, in this mode, and when I use the left mouse button, it'll just drag it along, and if I use the right mouse button, it'll zoom in and out. I can always go back to the full screen by hitting the home button, and I can go back through all the previous zooms I've had by clicking the back and forward buttons, it's a nice interactive set of plots. And you can see that with what is ultimately, that's the total program. And all of the work is done in that, and all this is just importing stuff. And if I took out the comments, I would be even shorter. So there's not a lot of writing to get this to do this. And then we've got something that's quite useful. So we can see the last month, and the red is the inlet temperature. So if we zoom in on, let's have a look at these few days. These big dips in temperature, if we look at down, actually, if you look down here, you'll see that it displays what time so in the format, I'm pointing at it, but you can't see. But the 0624 is the month and day, and then 13, 14, 15 is the hour of the day. So that's 7 in the morning. But it's probably close to 8. Yeah, there's 8 o'clock and 7 o'clock. If we zoom in, okay, let's just let's zoom in a bit. So we'll zoom in on for a day, and you see now along here 2, 4, 8, 12, and if I keep zooming, we can see here's 8, 9, 10. So each of these is hour of the day. So here, if we look down to the bottom, I'll keep zooming and we'll get a more accurate time. 7:22. So that was actually looking at it 7:28. So all that's to say that was when we had our shower on that first shower on that day, and there'll be a second, looks like a second and a third shower. There's 3 of us, and it comes down now by, there's not a lot of sun on this day, obviously, because it didn't start even working really at all until after 9, and it didn't really work that much. And you can see it kind of didn't do much coming through. Here it lifted the temperature, but only lifted it up to 33.5 degrees. So there wasn't much going on that day. Let's now look at the next day, and we can see that the pump worked a lot harder through the day and started working early at around 8:30 or something. So here's our showers again, and it sort of leveled out, and by now it's starting to warm up, and it got the temperature in the tank, my inlet temperature, back up to about 48 or something. Yeah, 47. So we can see that this day was also, we got a reasonable amount of heating during the day. We go back here though, and let's have a look. A day like this one looks like it must have been a nice day. And if we zoom in on this day during the daylight hours, yes, it started working and it ran for most of the day. And there's the inlet, which started off at 60. So actually we can see here, this is a kick from the electric hot water at 7 in the morning when we had our shower, or maybe before. And here's the main heating event through the night, starting at midnight-ish, 11 o'clock, yeah, midnight. And that was the heating from the mains power off peak. And then we got a second kick in the morning. And then here we have the showers in the morning and the overall warming. And then the temperature drops off. And here's our not much of a kick at 11:30 or whatever it is. And then here's our morning showers again. And the temperature dropped off on the main tank as well. And not much heating through the day. So we can see again there, and then because there wasn't a lot of heating, we had to do a fair bit of heating through with the mains power. And again, here's our showers. And on this day, we had our grandchildren over, and they get a bath. So this would have been the bath, or it could have been my daughter having a late shower, who knows. Normally they have their bath at 2 in the afternoon or something. So probably my daughter being slow to get up. But we can see we can get quite a bit of information. Again, not much heating through this day. And big heat at night. And so this is quite informative. Again, big heat off the electric. And if we go back to this, we can tell which days we've got a lot of work out of our solar hot water, because we get the inlet temperature rises quite a lot. And here's a period of days where it obviously was a series of clear days, and the inlet temperature didn't get as low. And you can see that the tank temperature didn't sag nearly as far. And these are days where the tank temperature really dropped. So it's quite interesting for me anyway. And if I wanted to do a lot more with this, I could have it so that it was just every minute or even more frequently retrieving the information, the data, the program running all the time and updating the plots live, and also I could easily add it so that it wrote the files or new data into the into a log file, storing it and appending the new data into it. But if I wanted to keep the data, I could have a daily file, or I could have it so that like a set of daily files, or I could have a single file that had the crude data. But I'm not too worried. This is only transient sort of data, and I can see quite clearly that the solar hot water system is working, and I can see it. I've actually got available to me here. Solar production isn't reading correctly. That was a lousy day today. Yesterday I think was better. Yep. But this is overestimating my solar production. I think that the clamp that I've got measuring that for the solar hot water is actually reading off something. It's gathering more than one one wire. I think it might have moved too close. That used to be quite accurate, but it would not have been producing that much power at this time of the year. So if we ignore that gives us an idea of the shape of that shows us the shape of the day. And we ran the air conditioning last night because we were wusses and it was cold. This is dinner being cooked. That was probably me in the study here. Turn off solar production because that's probably my fan heater that I ran to warm the room up. That's the hot water, and that's the hot water being heated from off peak. And there's the hot water being turned on at the moment, and I can see now the house power, it's 20 past 11 at night, and the solar hot water system is running because that's normally the background is about 350 watts or 300 watts. During the day, a bit more if the telly's on or something like that. And there's the aircon. So I've got other ways of verifying this data. There's also, I've got the solar production that I believe, because I've got N-phase microinverters, I can go to the N-phase and phase website, and so sign in. It should have okay. I've got LastPass for storing my logins, so that's useful. So we can go in here, and if we look at energy, it's still updating, obviously, loading the page. There we go. If we go to energy, I've got the entire, so that's today, and you can see that that is way less power than it was reporting on that other one. So I'll have to go out into my fuse box and have a look at my setup there. But I've got this data from the day that it was installed for my solar production. You see that the solar panels are not fading with their production very much. I think that's just because we had, that was real. It was not lost capacity of the solar panels. That's just, it was cloudy, and we had a lot of smoke at the beginning of the year with the bushfires, and so I think that this shows that my solar panels are doing great. But yeah, I've got these independent ways of verifying that everything's working, and I believe it is. So anyway, I'm not sure how many people will be interested in watching this. It's quite a technical video in some ways, but if people don't watch it, that's all right. I've now got a record of what was going on at this time. So I will call it quits on this, and yeah, I've got a pile of other videos that I haven't made yet. Oops, sorry. A bunch of videos that I have recorded that I haven't put up yet. It's because I've just been, I don't know whether it's lockdown, COVID lockdown malaise or something like that. And the irony is, because I've got all the time now, but I don't have the inclination. So anyway, that's my solar hot water logging, and I could do a lot more. I could plot my power consumption against it, and I could plot my solar radiation. I've actually got a little weather station. There's a console here. That's not really giving me accurate readings. It's the sensors are all in a very bad place, but it would give me a reasonable solar radiation, and it does have a solar radiometer on. I put that in for writing code for work for that other tracker controller program. So I have that data if I want to look at it. But broadly speaking, I think I've achieved what I was aiming for. So anyway, that'll do for now. See ya.